The palace of Empress Valeria stood like a jewel in the heart of the capital planet, shining under the twin suns. Its spires reached high into the sky, glinting with gold and crystal, while the grand halls echoed with the footsteps of nobles, diplomats, and guards alike. The empire stretched across hundreds of star systems, a web of alliances and rivalries, and the Empress was the center of it all. Kyle, the human guard captain, walked along the polished marble corridors, his armor quietly clinking with each step. Humans were considered small players in this vast empire, often underestimated by alien species with longer lifespans and advanced abilities. Yet Kale carried himself with confidence and a sharp mind, aware that his loyalty and vigilance were as important as any noble's bloodline. He paused outside the council chamber, listening. Inside, alien nobles argued in a language he did not fully understand, their voices sharp with suspicion and ambition. Kale did not need to understand every word. He could sense the tension, the undercurrents of distrust that ran like lightning through the grand hall. "The Empress is distracted," whispered a voice. "Her mind is not clear. Decisions are faltering," Kale frowned. These whispers were common among the court's aliens, but something deeper troubled him. The Empress had always been decisive, brilliant in strategy and diplomacy. Hearing her doubted in this way was unsettling. He continued down the corridor toward the throne room. The doors loomed tall, etched with patterns of ancient battles and victories. Inside, the Empress sat upon her throne, a vision of calm and grace. Her silver gown shimmered under the lights, and her crown seemed almost alive, catching the light at every angle. Yet Kale noticed a subtle hesitation in her movements, a slight pause before each command. Small things, almost imperceptible, but he noticed them. Kale's duty was clear: protect the Empress at all costs. But more than duty, he felt a personal loyalty. He had been trained to anticipate threats, not just from outside the palace, but from within. The court itself could be as dangerous as any battlefield. As he stepped closer, a subtle vibration ran through the floor, barely noticeable to anyone else. Kale stiffened. It was the signal he had been waiting for. A message had arrived, one that he alone had deciphered in time. The palace security network had intercepted a communication between unknown parties. An assassination attempt was being planned. He knew he had to act carefully. Announcing it would only cause panic and chaos, giving the conspirators the advantage. He needed to observe, to prepare, and to strike at the right moment. Kale made his way to the side chambers, where the palace archives stored records of every mission, every security detail, and every unusual event. The archives were dimly lit, the walls lined with shelves of data crystals and scrolls. He accessed the most recent files, comparing the patterns of past threats with the new intelligence. The plot was clever, targeting the Empress during an upcoming ceremonial event, when the court would be distracted and defenses spread thin. He frowned. The alien factions were clever, but they underestimated humans. Humans relied on ingenuity, unpredictability, and courage. Kale intended to prove that tonight. The ceremonial event approached. Nobles and dignitaries from across the empire would gather, their intricate robes and glowing ornaments creating a sea of color. Empress Valeria was scheduled to deliver an important speech, reaffirming alliances and setting plans for the next expansion of the empire. To the crowd, it would appear as a day of celebration. To Kale, it was a battlefield. As the Empress descended the grand staircase, Kale positioned himself near the front, close enough to act instantly if needed. His eyes scanned the crowd, noting every movement, every unusual glance. The aliens moved with elegance, but their eyes betrayed ambition, fear, and curiosity. Kale recognized the signs immediately. The Empress began to speak, her voice calm and steady, but Kale noticed it falter for a fraction of a second. A brief pause, almost invisible, but enough to signal that something was affecting her mind. He clenched his fists inside his gloves, a mixture of concern and determination surging through him. As the speech continued, Kyle's attention shifted to the security measures. Guards were stationed at key points, but some had been subtly misdirected. Their patrol patterns changed without explanation. Someone inside the palace was manipulating the defenses. Kale realized this could only be the work of insiders, someone who understood the palace as well as he did. He moved quietly, blending with the crowd, yet staying close to the Empress. His mind raced, analyzing possibilities, predicting moves before they happened. His human intuition was sharper than most of the court expected. Humans were small, physically less imposing than many alien species, but Cale's mind, strategy, and courage were unmatched. Then, a shimmer caught his eye. A device, small and almost invisible, was hidden near the throne. Its glow was faint, but Cale recognized the signature. A biotechnological implant capable of influencing thoughts and behavior. His stomach tightened. The Empress had been compromised. Someone had planted it secretly and no one else in the court had noticed. Kyle's mind raced. If the device activated fully during the speech, the Empress could be forced to make dangerous decisions, possibly leading the Empire into chaos. Worse, if the conspirators acted too soon, the Empress could be harmed physically. Cale knew he had to act with precision. He waited for the perfect moment. The aliens in the court were already beginning to whisper, sensing a shift in the Empress's behavior. Panic was close to the surface. Cale could not let fear take hold, not yet. He needed to maintain the appearance of calm while preparing to intervene. The Empress finished her speech. Applause echoed through the hall, but Cale noticed the tension behind the smiles. Eyes darted, conversations paused, and subtle gestures passed between factions. The court was beginning to fracture, and Kyle's instincts told him the chaos was only just starting. After the ceremony, Cale accompanied the Empress back to her private chambers. He kept close, observing her reactions, ready to act if the device tried to influence her. The Empress, unaware of the hidden threat, smiled warmly at her advisors, but Kyle noticed the slight hesitation in her steps. He knew this was only the beginning. That night, Kyle remained vigilant. The palace was quiet, but quietness in such a place was never natural. He walked the corridors, inspecting every door, every passage. Shadows moved where they shouldn't, and faint signals hinted at unseen surveillance. The conspirators were already in motion, testing the palace defenses, looking for weaknesses. Cale allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. Humans were small, often underestimated, yet here he was, standing between the Empress and a plot that could destroy the Empire. It was dangerous, exhausting work, but he felt a quiet pride. Humanity's greatest strength was not physical power, but intelligence, courage, and loyalty. He intended to show the court that humans were not to be ignored. As dawn approached, Cale returned to the Empress's chambers, ensuring her safety for the night. The first signs of the coming chaos were already visible. The whispers of alien factions, the subtle cracks in trust, the hidden manipulations. Only he knew the full truth about the Empress. Only he could protect her, and he would. The calm before the storm was ending. The court was about to descend into chaos, but Cale, the human guard, was ready. His mind was sharp, his resolve unshakable, and his loyalty absolute. Whatever the conspirators had planned, they would face one human who would not bend, not falter, and would protect the Empress at any cost. The palace lights glimmered in the early morning. But for Cale, every shadow could hide danger. Every corridor could hide betrayal. The Empire rested on his vigilance, and he would not fail. The morning sun cast a golden light over the palace, reflecting off the polished marble floors and the countless spires that crowned the halls. Despite the beauty, a sense of tension lingered. Cale moved quietly through the corridors, his eyes scanning every corner, every shadow. The palace had begun to change in subtle ways, signs that chaos was creeping closer. Empress Valeria held her morning council in the Grand Hall, where alien nobles, ministers, and generals gathered. Their robes shimmered with jewels and light, a display of power meant to impress, yet Cale could see the unease behind their smiles. Some whispered behind hands, glances flicking toward the Empress. Others exchanged subtle gestures, signaling alliances and rivalries. The Empress sat at the center of the hall, her silver hair flowing over her shoulders. Her crown sparkled, but Cale noticed her hands tremble slightly as she reached for the documents before her. The pause was brief, almost unnoticeable, yet enough to make him tense. The implant, whatever its influence, was still affecting her. The Eastern Fleet's report unexpected resistance, a general said, his voice calm but urgent. We may need to reroute resources. Valeria nodded, but Cale noticed her hesitation. She looked at the general, then at the advisors beside her before responding. Her words were careful, deliberate, but the delay was unusual. She was normally decisive, able to make difficult choices without pause. Kale's mind raced. If the Empress appeared weak, the factions in the court would seize the opportunity. Rumors would spread, alliances would shift, and the Empire could destabilize before anyone realized it. His task was not only to protect her physically, but to preserve her authority. As the council continued, Kale noticed movement in the crowd. Nobles whispered, eyes darting, hands brushing against concealed devices. He followed their glances, noting who seemed suspicious. Humans were not supposed to be cunning in the courts. Yet Kale could read intentions better than most aliens could read their own mirrors. During a pause in the council, Kale approached Valeria quietly. "Your Majesty," he said softly, "there are subtle signals of unrest among the factions. I advise caution." The Empress gave him a faint, distracted smile. "I know, Kale, but I must act as if all is well. The court cannot see fear." Kale nodded. Her composure was remarkable, yet he could see the strain. Even a slight loss of focus could give the conspirators the advantage. After the council, Kale moved to inspect the ceremonial chambers. Preparations were underway for a diplomatic feast, an event that would gather dignitaries from neighboring star systems. The feast was meant to celebrate alliances and trade agreements, but it was also a test of the palace's defenses. The conspirators would likely act during this gathering, when distractions were greatest. Kale observed the palace staff and guards. Subtle changes had been made to the patrol routes. Some doors were left slightly ajar, while security sensors had minor gaps. These small manipulations could allow intruders to strike at key moments. The changes were clever but predictable to a human trained in observation and strategy. He approached the throne chamber again, careful not to draw attention. The device influencing the Empress had not fully activated, but its presence was enough to cloud her focus. Kyle examined the area, noting shadows where energy signatures shifted. Someone had tampered with the palace's internal systems to hide the device's signals. Kyle's mind worked quickly, devising ways to neutralize the influence without alarming the court. He knew that if the nobles or advisors discovered the device, panic would spread instantly. Rumors of the Empress's weakness could ignite open conflict within the palace and beyond. Humans might be underestimated, but Kale's intellect could match any alien faction. As afternoon approached, the Empress held a private meeting with senior advisors. Kyle lingered outside the chamber, listening carefully. "She seems different," one advisor whispered. "Her judgment is faltering." "Yes," another agreed. "It's as if she's being controlled." Kale's ears twitched at the word. They were close, yet still oblivious to the true cause. He considered intervening, but timing was crucial. Any hasty move could expose the plot prematurely. He needed more information. He decided to trace the device's source. Using hidden corridors and maintenance shafts, Kale moved through the palace unseen. His path led him to an older part of the palace, where ancient machinery and unused chambers held secrets long forgotten. Dust covered the floors, and the hum of energy from the main palace systems faded, replaced by silence. In one chamber, he found a faint glow behind a wall panel. His eyes narrowed. The signal matched the device he had observed earlier. Carefully, he analyzed it. The device was sophisticated, biotechnological in nature, designed to interfere with neural activity subtly. It could influence decisions, induce hesitation, and even manipulate emotions. Its creators had been clever, but they had not accounted for human adaptability. Kale took a deep breath. He had the knowledge, the skill, and the courage to act, but he would need to do it with precision. The court was teetering on the edge of chaos. A wrong move could cost the Empress her life or destabilize the Empire entirely. Returning to the main halls, Kale kept a watchful eye on the Empress. She moved with grace, smiling and nodding to nobles. Yet Kale noticed micro-expressions of doubt and uncertainty. Even she was unaware of how much her mind was being influenced. Only he knew the full truth. That evening, the ceremonial feast began. The grand hall glittered with colors, light reflecting from crystals and polished surfaces. Nobles from multiple star systems gathered, their conversations a mixture of diplomacy, flattery, and hidden scheming. Kale stationed himself near the Empress, ready to act at a moment's notice. As the feast progressed, Kale observed subtle signals from the alien factions. Some tried to approach the Empress, while others exchanged secret messages. Their ambitions were clear, but none expected the humans' ingenuity. Kale's eyes scanned the room, noting every movement, every suspicious gesture. Then, a small incident occurred. A servant accidentally dropped a tray of glasses, causing a brief clatter. Eyes turned toward the sound, and in that split second, Kale saw a shadowy figure move toward the Empress. He acted instinctively, intercepting the intruder before they could reach her. The figure froze, eyes wide, realizing they had been noticed. "Step back," Kyle said quietly, positioning himself between the Empress and the threat. The intruder hesitated, then melted into the crowd, disappearing before anyone else could react. Kale's heart pounded, but his face remained calm. The court was unaware of how close danger had come. After the feast, Kale escorted the Empress back to her chambers. The corridors were quieter now, shadows longer in the dim light. Kale's mind raced, considering the next steps. The device had not been removed, and the conspirators were likely planning further moves. Patience and vigilance were essential. Valeria paused at her chamber door, turning to Kale. "You seem tense," she said. Kale shook his head slightly. "Only aware of my duty, Your Majesty. Rest assured you are safe." She nodded, placing a hand briefly on his shoulder. "I trust you, Kyle, more than anyone else in this court." His chest tightened. The trust of the Empress was both an honor and a burden. The court would descend into chaos, and Kale knew he alone carried the knowledge that could prevent disaster. Humans had always been underestimated, but this was his chance to prove that courage, intelligence, and loyalty mattered more than lineage or species. As night fell, Kale resumed his rounds. The palace seemed quiet, but quietness was deceptive. Whispers of ambition and treachery lingered in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Kale's eyes scanned the corridors, his mind alert for every anomaly. In one hidden passage, he paused, listening to faint echoes. The palace itself seemed alive, every creak and hum carrying hidden information. Kale moved cautiously, analyzing patterns and predicting potential threats. The conspirators were clever, but humans were unpredictable. Kale's mind was sharper, his instincts keener, and his loyalty unwavering. He returned to the Empress's chambers before dawn, ensuring she was safe. Her breathing was calm, her features relaxed in sleep. Kale studied her for a moment, aware that the coming days would be critical. The court was already beginning to fracture, and only he had the knowledge, skill, and courage to navigate the storm. The first signs of chaos were visible, the whispers, the mistrust, the subtle manipulations. But the full danger had not yet arrived. Kale knew that patience, strategy, and courage would be the key to protecting the Empress and the Empire. Humans had always been underestimated, but here in the heart of the palace, Kale would prove that even a single human could make the difference between order and collapse. The palace rested under the twin suns, beautiful and shining. But for Kale, every shadow was a threat, every movement a potential danger. The court was about to descend into chaos, and he alone knew the truth about the Empress, and he would act to protect her, no matter the cost. The palace had settled into an uneasy calm. Outside, the twin suns shone brightly over the capital planet, illuminating spires and banners that proclaimed the Empire's grandeur. Inside, however, tension pulsed through the corridors like an invisible current. Kale moved silently, aware that danger could strike at any moment. He had watched the Empress closely, noting her hesitation and subtle changes in behavior. What he had once suspected was now confirmed. The Empress was being controlled. Kyle's investigation had led him to the palace's ancient technology chambers, hidden beneath layers of modern systems and corridors. Dust covered the floors, and the hum of old machinery mingled with the soft echo of his footsteps. In the center of the room, he found it, a small, almost invisible device emitting a faint glow. He crouched beside it, examining the intricate mechanisms. The technology was far beyond anything humans had invented, yet he could understand its purpose. The device interfered with neural pathways, subtly altering thought patterns and emotions. It could delay decisions, create doubt, or even induce obedience. The Empress had been unaware of its presence, and the court had not noticed her faltering behavior. Kale's mind raced. Removing the device was dangerous, but leaving it in place was even more so. The conspirators behind it were clever, likely monitoring the palace systems for interference. One false move could expose him, or worse, endanger the Empress. He considered his options carefully. Patience and observation were essential. He needed to understand the full extent of the device's influence before acting. Every step had to be precise, calculated, and invisible to the court. Returning to the main palace, Kale observed the Empress from a distance. She moved through the halls with grace, smiling at nobles and advisors, yet he noticed micro-expressions of hesitation. Her eyes flickered toward a doorway, then back at her attendants as if sensing something she could not name. Only Kale knew the truth. Her mind was not entirely her own. That evening, Kale met with a few trusted allies among the palace staff. They were humans overlooked by the court but skilled and loyal. Kale shared his observations without revealing the full danger. Too much knowledge could cause panic. "The Empress has been compromised," he said quietly, "but the court must not know. If rumors spread, chaos will follow and the Empire could collapse before we even act." His allies nodded solemnly. They understood the stakes. Their loyalty to the Empress and to humanity was unwavering. Together they would act with precision, ensuring her safety and restoring her authority. The following day, the palace erupted into subtle chaos. Alien factions whispered openly, testing each other's loyalties. Accusations flew in hushed tones, alliances shifted, and the court began to fracture. The Empress, under the influence of the device, struggled to maintain control. Her usual clarity was clouded, her decisions hesitant. Kale noticed it immediately and took steps to counteract the effects discreetly. During a strategic council meeting, an alien general suggested a risky military maneuver. Normally, the Empress would have rejected it outright, recognizing its dangers. Instead, she paused, her hand trembling slightly as she considered the proposal. Kale stepped closer, his presence subtle but steadying. "Trust your instincts, Your Majesty," he whispered. "The plan carries risks." The Empress blinked, focusing on him for a moment, and then nodded. The hesitation passed unnoticed by the rest of the court. Kale's intervention had restored her confidence, if only temporarily. But the danger was far from over. That night, Kale detected movement near the palace perimeter. Shadowy figures slipped through the gardens, testing defenses, probing for weaknesses. He moved swiftly, intercepting one intruder before the alarms could sound. The figure struggled, eyes wide with surprise at being caught by a single human. Kale's grip was firm, precise, and in a flash he neutralized the threat without anyone noticing. As he secured the intruder, Kale's mind considered the larger picture. The conspiracy was well organized. Multiple factions had coordinated efforts to destabilize the palace. Assassins, spies, and saboteurs moved with precision, yet they underestimated one key element: the human mind. Humans were unpredictable, adaptable, and courageous. Kale intended to use these strengths to protect the Empress and outmaneuver the conspirators. Returning to the Empress's chambers, Kale carefully removed the device, using a combination of skill, intuition, and patience. The moment was tense. One wrong move could trigger an alarm or worsen her condition. But Kale's hands were steady, his mind focused. The device was removed, and the Empress would soon regain her full faculties. He watched her sleep, ensuring she remained safe. Her breathing was calm, her face serene. Yet Kale knew the coming days would demand every ounce of vigilance. The conspirators would not rest. They would continue their schemes, seeking any opportunity to strike. The next morning, Kale noticed immediate improvement in the Empress's behavior. Her confidence returned, her decisions sharp and decisive. She addressed the council with renewed authority, her presence commanding respect. Yet the court was already unsettled. Rumors of weakness had spread even if the cause was unknown. Alien factions eyed each other with suspicion, ready to exploit any perceived advantage. Kyle knew the balance was delicate. The conspirators were clever, but humans had an edge: ingenuity and courage. He devised a plan to expose the conspirators subtly, using strategy rather than force. Open confrontation could trigger civil war. Deception and precision were safer, more effective tools. He moved through the palace, setting small traps, redirecting attention, and guiding loyal allies to support the Empress. Each action was calculated, ensuring the conspirators remained unaware of his presence. The palace became a chessboard, with Kale anticipating moves several steps ahead. One afternoon, Kale intercepted a secret message intended for one of the alien factions. It revealed the location of hidden devices, safe paths for intruders, and coded instructions for destabilizing the Empress further. Kale memorized the details and subtly redirected the palace security to neutralize the threats without revealing the plot. As night fell, Kale's efforts began to show results. The conspirators' plans faltered, confusion spreading among their ranks. The Empress, now fully aware and in control, regained her composure. Kale's interventions remained invisible, preserving the court's perception of order while preventing disaster. Yet Kale knew the true danger had not passed. The conspirators were adaptable, resourceful, and patient. They would continue to test the palace's defenses, seeking weaknesses to exploit. The human guard could not falter, for the Empress's life and the Empire's stability depended on his vigilance. In the quiet hours before dawn, Kyle reflected on humanity's place in the Empire. Humans were often underestimated, seen as weak or minor players. Yet here, in the heart of the palace, his intelligence, courage, and loyalty had made the difference. One human could protect an empire, outsmarting factions far stronger and older than himself. He returned to the Empress's chambers, ensuring she was safe for the night. She slept peacefully, unaware of how close she had come to danger. Kale stood watch, silent and vigilant, knowing that the court would continue to test her and that the conspirators would not give up easily. The first signs of chaos had been addressed, but the palace remained a dangerous place. Whispers of betrayal, ambition, and hidden threats lingered in the corridors. Kyle's mission was far from over. Every step, every observation, and every decision mattered. Humans had been underestimated, but Kale intended to show that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could change the course of history. As the twin suns rose once more, casting light across the palace, Kale prepared for the next stage of the challenge. The Empress was recovering, the conspirators' plans were faltering, but the war for the palace's soul had only just begun. The stakes were higher than ever, and Kale, the human guard, stood ready to face whatever danger came next. The Empire rested on a knife's edge, but Kale's vigilance, courage, and ingenuity offered hope. Humanity had proven that one small species, overlooked and underestimated, could make a difference greater than anyone had imagined. And Kale would continue to protect the Empress, guiding the Empire through the storm that was about to descend. The palace was no longer a place of simple diplomacy. Its halls, once filled with ceremonial grandeur, had become a battlefield of strategy, where unseen forces moved against one another. Kale, the human guard, understood this better than anyone. The Empress was regaining her strength and clarity, but the conspirators had not given up. They continued to test the palace's defenses, probing for weaknesses in ways subtle and clever. Kale moved quietly through the corridors, his senses alert to the faintest disturbances. He had studied the palace's layout, the patrols of each guard, the habits of the nobles. Every step, every shadow, every whisper could carry a clue. In the dim light of the hallways, he was a ghost, seen by none yet aware of everything. The Empress had begun to trust him more openly. Valeria was aware now of the dangers surrounding her, though she did not yet know the full extent of the conspiracy. Kyle had chosen to shield her from the worst of the knowledge, preserving her composure while he worked behind the scenes. That morning, Kyle observed the alien factions closely. They moved like predators, calculating, cautious yet greedy for advantage. One faction, the Zeralites, had been spreading rumors about the Empress's indecision, seeking to sow distrust among her advisors. Another faction, the Lumari, tried to negotiate secret deals with generals to control the Empire's fleets. Kale understood that open confrontation would be dangerous. Instead, he needed to outmaneuver them. Using subtle manipulation, Kale guided palace security and loyal advisors to counter the conspirators' plans. He planted false information, redirected attention, and created situations where the alien strategies would fail without their knowledge. The palace had become a chessboard, and Kale was moving every piece with precision. One evening, Kale noticed an unusual gathering in the east wing of the palace. A group of alien nobles and rogue guards had convened in secret, whispering about the next phase of their plan. Kale approached unseen, moving through hidden passages and listening carefully. They must be confident, he thought. They do not realize that a single human sees more than they imagine. He took note of the conspirators' movements, memorizing exits, entrances, and escape routes. Kale planned to intercept their scheme at the perfect moment, when it would matter most and reveal their intentions without causing panic. Back in the Empress's chambers, Valeria paced, her expression serious. Kale entered quietly. "Your Majesty, the court is restless," he said. "Rumors and plots are spreading, but there is a way to turn the tide without open confrontation." Valeria stopped pacing and looked at him. "Tell me, Kale, what must I do?" Kale explained his plan, careful to simplify it without revealing all the dangers. He would manipulate events so that the conspirators' actions would expose themselves, while the Empress appeared in full control. Her trust in him was absolute, and that trust allowed Kale to guide the palace like a skilled tactician guiding pieces on a board. That night, Kale moved to set the first stage of his plan. He used secret passages, energy control systems, and hidden observation points to monitor the conspirators. Every movement they made, every whispered word he recorded silently in his mind. The human mind could anticipate patterns in ways aliens often overlooked. Kale would use this advantage to protect the Empress and restore order. The following day, a confrontation occurred, though few realized it. One of the conspirators attempted to approach the Empress during a meeting, carrying a small device meant to distract or control her further. Kale intercepted the individual without drawing attention. A gentle but firm hand guided the intruder away, and a subtle comment from Kale caused the person to hesitate and retreat. The attempt had failed, and the conspirators had not understood why. Kyle knew they would try again, and he prepared accordingly. He used subtle changes in patrol routes, adjusted the schedules of advisors, and even manipulated lighting and sound in key corridors to create confusion for the conspirators. Every detail mattered. The palace had become a living puzzle, and Kale was both guardian and solver. Meanwhile, the Empress began regaining her confidence in public appearances. Her decisions became clear and authoritative, giving the court the impression that stability had returned. Yet Kale was aware that this was only a partial victory. The conspirators were clever, and one mistake could undo everything. During a late-night watch, Kale discovered that the conspirators had hidden another device, smaller than the first, in a private chamber connected to the Empress's quarters. This device was meant to trigger at a critical moment, ensuring her hesitation or confusion during an important decision. Kale carefully dismantled it, his hands steady, his mind precise. The act was not just about removing a threat. It was a demonstration of human ingenuity. The device had been designed to exploit subtle weaknesses, yet Kale had identified it, neutralized it, and ensured that no one in the palace noticed. His skill and courage were silently proving that humans could match, and even exceed, the cunning of older, more experienced species. Kale's actions also sent indirect messages to loyal advisors. Subtle guidance, hints, and strategic positioning helped them recognize allies and weaknesses among the alien factions. Slowly, the balance of power shifted, though the conspirators remained unaware of how much control Kale truly had. As days passed, tensions in the palace escalated. Rumors of plots, hidden agendas, and secret alliances spread like wildfire. The court became a storm of suspicion, but Kale stayed calm. His human intuition and understanding of strategy allowed him to anticipate moves and counter them before they could become threats. One critical evening, a confrontation reached its peak. A faction of conspirators attempted a direct move to seize influence over the Empress's advisors. Kale had anticipated this. Using hidden passages and subtle signals, he positioned loyal guards and humans strategically. When the conspirators made their move, they found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, blocked by security where none should have been, guided away from key chambers, and watched at every step. The conspirators were confused. Their plans were falling apart without their understanding why. Kale smiled quietly. The human mind, underestimated by the court, had turned the tide. They were clever, yes, but they had not accounted for unpredictability. courage, and the ability to think in ways the older, rigid factions could not. Back in her chambers, the Empress watched Kale with gratitude. She did not yet know every detail, but she sensed the stability returning. She was beginning to understand the importance of humans in her court, not just as guards, but as thinkers, strategists, and protectors. Kyle, however, did not relax. He knew the conspirators would regroup. The palace was still a dangerous place full of ambition and ambition's shadows. Every step forward required constant vigilance, careful planning, and precise action. Humans had proven their worth once more, but the war for the palace's soul was far from over. In the quiet hours before dawn, Kale reflected on humanity's potential. Aliens often looked down upon humans as weak or insignificant. Yet here, in the heart of the Empire, a single human had outmaneuvered entire factions, protected an Empress, and preserved the stability of a vast empire. Courage, intelligence, and loyalty mattered more than strength or status. Kale's actions demonstrated that humanity could rise above expectations, influencing history through skill and determination rather than raw power. The palace lights glimmered in the early morning, but Kale's vigilance did not waver. Every corridor, every shadow, every movement mattered. The conspirators were still active, still plotting, yet the human guard had proven that one careful mind could change the course of events. Kyle returned to the Empress's chambers, ensuring her safety and resting briefly before the day began. She slept peacefully, her features calm, a reflection of the order Kale had restored. Yet the hidden war continued, unseen by all but him. The palace had become a battlefield of strategy, and Kale, the human guard, was its silent general. He knew the next stage would be more dangerous. The conspirators were clever, patient, and determined. Kale would need every ounce of his intelligence, courage, and human ingenuity to outmaneuver them. But he was ready. Humanity had proven its value, and he would continue to protect the Empress and the Empire no matter the cost. The court was beginning to recognize that humans were not insignificant. Though unspoken, respect and caution grew toward Kale and his human allies. The palace had become a proving ground, and humans had demonstrated that strategy, loyalty, and bravery could surpass expectations, even in a world dominated by ancient and powerful alien species. The hidden war continued, but Kale had gained the advantage. Every step, every observation, every action mattered. The palace's future and the future of the Empire depended on his vigilance. The human guard had become the unseen force keeping chaos at bay, and he would not fail. The sun rose again over the twin horizons, shining on spires and banners, but the real battles were invisible, fought in corridors, minds, and hearts. Kale's mission was far from over, but humanity had proven its worth, and he, the human guard, stood ready to face whatever came next. The palace had entered a state of tense anticipation. Every corridor, every chamber, every shadow seemed to hum with uncertainty. Kale moved through the halls with his usual vigilance, aware that the final stage of the conspirators' plans could unfold at any moment. The Empress was stronger now, fully aware of the threats around her, yet she relied on Kale's judgment as she prepared to reclaim her authority fully. The human guard had spent days preparing for this moment. Each step, each maneuver had been planned with precision. The conspirators, confident in their schemes, had underestimated him at every turn. Now their final attempt to seize control of the palace was imminent. Kale knew he had to act decisively. It began with subtle disruption. Using hidden passages in the palace's communication systems, Kale manipulated information to isolate the conspirators. He created confusion within their ranks, making each faction suspect the others of betrayal. Loyalty faltered, alliances cracked, and the palace became a stage for the unraveling of their plans. Meanwhile, the Empress addressed her advisors in a private chamber. Her voice was steady, her expression commanding respect. "The palace has been tested," she said. "We know the threats we face and we will act decisively. Trust in those who have proven their loyalty, and together we will restore order." Kyle stood silently by her side, observing the court's reactions. His eyes scanned every movement, every expression, every whisper. The conspirators would strike soon, but he was ready. At the appointed hour, the first wave of the conspirators made their move. They attempted to intercept key advisors and manipulate the flow of information. Kale anticipated each step. Loyal human guards, positioned strategically, blocked every attempt quietly, efficiently, and without alerting the court. Alien factions were outmaneuvered. unable to coordinate as Kale's careful planning disrupted their communications and strategies. A second group tried to confront the Empress directly, aiming to intimidate or coerce her. Kale intercepted them in the grand corridor. His movements were precise, controlled, and authoritative. He disarmed the intruders and guided them away from the Empress without drawing attention. Their surprise was evident. How could a single human thwart their coordinated effort? Throughout the palace, the final confrontations unfolded. Every attempt by the conspirators was anticipated and countered. Kale's intelligence, vigilance, and ingenuity turned the tide. The conspirators' plans collapsed piece by piece, and confusion spread among their ranks. Their once confident scheming dissolved into hesitation and fear. In the throne chamber, the Empress observed quietly. She had regained full control, her mind clear and her authority unmistakable. Kale's subtle guidance had ensured her victory without compromising her image or causing panic. She now understood the depth of the human guard's role in protecting the Empire. Kale moved through the palace corridors one last time, ensuring that every threat had been neutralized. Devices, hidden passages, and secret messages were all accounted for. The conspirators, realizing their failure, were left without direction, exposed to the full authority of the Empress. The Empress summoned the council. Alien nobles, generals, and advisors gathered, many with guilty or anxious expressions. Valeria spoke with calm authority. The palace has faced a test of loyalty, cunning, and courage. Those who sought to undermine it have been revealed. Order is restored, and the Empire remains secure. The court was silent, absorbing her words. Respect and fear mingled in the eyes of the conspirators. They had underestimated the human guard, and now the consequences of that misjudgment were clear. Kale stepped forward, his presence quiet but commanding. The Empress acknowledged him with a subtle nod. Kyle has been the eyes and shield of this palace, she said. His vigilance, strategy, and courage have preserved our empire. Let it be known that humans are not to be underestimated, the court murmured, astonished. Humans had been considered minor players, weak and unimportant, yet here stood proof to the contrary. One human had safeguarded the Empress, outsmarted alien factions, and ensured the stability of the empire. Respect for humanity began to shift subtly, though the message was clear. Loyalty, intelligence, and courage mattered more than species or birthright. With the conspirators exposed and order restored, the palace began to breathe again. Whispers of intrigue were replaced with cautious conversation. Advisors aligned themselves with loyalty, and the Empress's authority was reaffirmed. Kale's strategy had not only protected the Empress but had also demonstrated the power of careful planning, observation, and human ingenuity. In her private chambers, the Empress turned to Kale. You have done more than guard me, Kale. You have preserved the Empire. I owe you my trust, my respect, and my gratitude. Kyle inclined his head. It was my duty, Your Majesty. Humanity's place is to serve, protect, and contribute. Today we have proven that loyalty and intelligence can make a difference no matter our size or number. Valeria smiled, her eyes reflecting both relief and admiration. The Empire has seen its strength in many forms, she said. Today it has seen the strength of humanity. The palace continued its routines, but the echoes of the crisis lingered. Kale remained vigilant, aware that the court's ambitions would always exist. Yet he knew that his actions had shifted perceptions. Humans, long underestimated, had proven their worth. The Empress, now fully aware of the hidden dangers she faced, recognized the value of careful strategy, intelligence, and loyal guardianship. Kale walked the corridors one last time, observing the palace under the soft light of dawn. The halls, once tense and charged with uncertainty, now carried a calm sense of stability. Nobles and advisors went about their duties, still cautious but no longer consumed by fear. The conspirators had been thwarted, and the Empress's authority had been restored fully. As Kale stood near the central balcony, gazing out over the city and the spires that reached to the sky, he reflected on humanity's place in the Empire. Humans were small, often underestimated, yet their courage, intelligence, and loyalty allowed them to influence events far beyond their perceived limits. One human had safeguarded an empire, guided an Empress, and outmaneuvered factions far stronger than himself. The Empress appeared beside him, her expression calm, her presence commanding. The court will remember this day, Kale, she said softly, and they will remember the role of humans in our empire. Kegel nodded, understanding that the recognition was not just for himself, but for all humans who had been overlooked or underestimated. "Let it be known that humans will continue to serve, protect, and contribute," he said. "Our strength is not in power alone, but in intelligence, courage, and loyalty." The Empress smiled, a sense of quiet pride in her eyes. "Then humanity has a place among the stars, equal in purpose and respect to all others." Kale turned back toward the palace halls. The hidden war had ended, order was restored, and the Empire was secure once more. The conspirators had been exposed and neutralized, and the Empress's trust had been fully regained. Yet Kale knew that vigilance would always be necessary. Threats could arise again, and ambition never rested. But for now, humans had proven themselves. They were not weak, insignificant, or to be underestimated. One human had changed the course of the Empire through courage, intelligence, and strategy. Kale had shown that even in a world dominated by ancient and powerful alien species, humans could make a difference that echoed across the stars. As the twin suns rose higher over the palace, casting light on spires, banners, and city streets, Kale remained at his post. The Empire rested in safety, the Empress's authority secure, and the court reminded that loyalty, intelligence, and courage mattered above all. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and Kale, the human guard, had ensured that the Empire would remember it. The palace was calm, yet the human mind remained vigilant. Kale's work was not done, but the first victory had been won. In the quiet, noble, and shining halls of the palace, one human had proven that greatness was not determined by species or strength, but by courage, loyalty, and the cleverness to act when it mattered most. And so, as the Empire looked toward the future, humanity's role was forever changed, respected, and acknowledged. Kyle, standing silently by the throne, knew that one human had made all the difference and that the stars now belonged to all who were brave, loyal, and wise enough to seize their place.